Well, New Mexico's upcoming governor's race and all the other 2026 campaigns just got a little bit more competitive. The Democratic and Republican primary elections, though, are still over a year away.
But for the first time in state history, all New Mexico voters will have the chance to decide who ends up on that general ballot in November. Griffin Rushton joins us outside a voting center right here in Albuquerque. And Griffin, I mean, opening up New Mexico's primaries is a major political shift.
Absolutely, Tessa. I mean, for decades, only registered Democrats and Republicans here in New Mexico got to pick which candidates made it past the primaries, largely ignoring all of New Mexico's independent and unaffiliated voters. And there are a lot more of them out there than you might think. Voter registration data from the New Mexico Secretary of State's office shows there's close to 330,000 independent voters throughout the state. That's roughly 25% of all voters in New Mexico. You can see it's that yellow chunk on the graph. It is a huge voting bloc that could easily make or break one of these primary elections. And advocates say that's kind of the point here. They believe opening up New Mexico's primary elections will drive up voter participation and hopefully make sure a more diverse group of New Mexicans is picking who gets to lead and represent the land of enchantment.
With more participation, we get better election outcomes. We get elected officials that look like us, feel like us, have the values like us.
And the easiest way to get more New Mexicans to vote is to allow them to vote.
This is not just about parties. It's about rights and increasing that voter participation.
According to the Secretary of State's office, just about 232,000 New Mexicans voted in last year's primary election. That's only 22% of registered Democrats and Republicans, but only 17% of all New Mexico voters. 324,000 independent voters, like Mike Michalski, were forced to register with one of the two parties or simply sit out.
I had to change affiliation to vote. Soon it was over, become independent again. That's what everybody did.
But in 2026, he'll get to stay an independent and simply pick a primary to vote in. And he believes that will force candidates on both sides of the aisle to campaign to a wider audience.
It might tamper down the verbiage because this is becoming violent on both sides. We don't need that.
Voter participation data suggests only 71,000 independent voters would have participated in last year's primary. But the Secretary of State says that's 71,000 wild cards.
In one election, data show independents leaning one way in a general election. In another, it shows them leaning another. So that's why they're independent, right? They really just choose by election what they want to do.
And advocates say more young New Mexicans are sticking with the independents.
40% of young voters aged 18 to 24 fell into this category.
The Secretary of State confirmed registered independents will have to choose one primary or the other. They can't vote in both. And she expects that will impact political campaigns.
And my attitude is, well, if you want those votes, you got to raise the money and you got to go after those votes. And I think it'll be incredibly important for candidates to do that.
While this new law technically goes into effect this summer, the next primary election is not until next summer.
Yeah, and Griffin, to go off of what the Secretary of State was saying there, this will absolutely impact how those candidates have to campaign for the governor's race.
Absolutely, Tessa. It means that these candidates are really going to have to start appealing to voters outside of their party much earlier. I mean, let's take a look at the Democrats, for example. Deb Haaland and Sam Bregman are the only ones running for the Democratic nomination right now. And in previous campaign cycles, they'd be fighting over New Mexico's 570,000 registered Democrats right now, and then they'd focus on winning the independents after the primary. But now they not only have to win over the majority of Democrats, but they also have to convince enough of those 330,000 independents to vote first in the Democratic primary, but also to vote for them. Now, Haaland and Bregman could still win the Democratic nomination by only courting Democratic voters, but they'd have to campaign really aggressively towards that base. So it seems more likely we're going to start seeing some messaging that appeals to a wider group of New Mexicans, but of course the Democrats will still be leaning leaning towards the Democrats. So, yeah, expect to see some more of that middle-of-the-road messaging, at least for this next election cycle.
Yeah, a whole new strategy and maybe less partisan. We'll see. Griffin, thanks so much. Open primaries won't be happening for the upcoming Albuquerque mayoral race, but that's a nonpartisan race. It doesn't have primaries anyway. Mayor Tim Keller is running for a third term with 8 challengers now looking to unseat him. They would be Mei-Ling Armijo, Eddie Varela, Patrick Seiss, Darren White, Luis Sanchez, Alpana Adair, Brian Fair, and Alexander Ubaez. Now, as we head into a busy election cycle, you'll find our complete coverage of these races in our newscasts and at KOB.com.